In the news tonight, Liberal political leader Mohammed al-Baradei is named as Egypt's interim prime minister as clashes continue across the country's squares between supporters and opponents of the deposed president. The main Syrian opposition National Coalition elects Ahmed Jarba, a tribal figure from the eastern province of Hasaka, as its president after a close runoff vote held in Istanbul. And French woman Marion Bartoli won the Wimbledon title, her first Grand Slam title ever, after beating Sabine Lisicki. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. Mohammed al-Baradei was named Egypt's interim prime minister to run the country during the transition period. State media said the interim leader, Adli Mansour, had summoned al-Baradei to the presidential palace earlier today. The former nuclear agency chief is among liberal political leaders opposed to the deposed president. He was to be sworn in later tonight. Mansour also held talks with the army chief and political leaders on the security situation in the country as the death toll from clashes rose to 37 today. Clashes between supporters and opponents of deposed President Mohamed Morsi have left more than 1,000 people wounded across the country. The most deadly clashes were in Alexandria, where 14 people were killed and over 200 wounded. Both opponents and supporters remain encamped in different squares in the capital. Supporters of Morsi gathered outside a mosque in a Cairo suburb to express their continued anger at his removal by the army. The Muslim Brotherhood yesterday called Friday of Rejection protests across the country and tried to march on the military compound where the ousted president is held. They say they will not back down until Morsi is reinstated. And today the country's Islamist coalition called for more protests tomorrow against what they call a military coup. The retrial of former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak is dragging on at snail's pace. The presiding judge adjourned the case on charges of conspiracy to murder of demonstrators in 2011 until August 17 to allow the defense more time to review recently presented evidence. Outside the courthouse, supporters of Mubarak sang and danced, not for the adjourning of the trial, but rather for the fall of Mohamed Morsi. Here's a story.
Former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak listens attentively in court on Saturday as his retrial is adjourned until after the fasting month of Ramadan. The former leader faces charges of conspiracy to murder hundreds of demonstrators in 2011. Flanked by his sons, Alaa and Gamal, the 85-year-old appeared in good health as he sat in the dock. Mubarak was sentenced to life imprisonment in June 2012, but the country's highest appeals court ordered a retrial in January after accepting appeals from both the defense and the prosecution. Proceedings against Mubarak have been dogged by controversy and delay. Pro-democracy activists and victims' families have accused Mubarak's defense team and judges appointed under his rule of dragging out the case to avoid a verdict.
Meanwhile, the situation in Gaza remains unbearable after Egypt closed the border crossing. Egyptian security yesterday closed the crossing between Gaza and Egypt after gunmen staged multiple attacks on security forces in the Sinai Peninsula. Egypt said the Rafah crossing would be closed until further notice. Petrol in Gaza ran out, and residents said the closure was making their daily lives even harder as they will not be able to get goods and petrol from Egypt.
The crossing has been closed. The tunnels are shut down. There are no goods, no construction material, no fuel or gas. All this affects us, the simple people who live day in day out in this city.
Over to the Syria crisis, the main Syrian opposition National Coalition elected Ahmed Jarba as its president after a close runoff vote held in Istanbul. Jarba is a tribal figure from the eastern province of Hasaka. Senior coalition official Adib Shishakli said the old coalition had failed to offer the Syrian people anything substantial and was preoccupied with internal politics, while Jarba is willing to work with all parties. The coalition is split into three power centers: the Muslim Brotherhood, the Sabah faction, and a Saudi-backed bloc.
The new president of the Syrian coalition is Mr. Ahmed Al-Asi Al-Jarba. The Secretary General of the coalition is Mr. Badr Jamous. The new three vice presidents, Ms. Suhair Atasi, Mr. Farouk Taifour, and Mr. Salim Al-Maslat. The regime yesterday focused its attacks on the city of Homs for the ninth consecutive day. They continue to attack the old Homs neighborhood, also Al-Khalidiyya. They are set on entering Al-Khalidiyya yesterday. We have confirmed reports of using chemical weapons against innocent civilians. We have more than 25 casualties in Al-Khalidiyya.
Meanwhile, continued fighting was reported between rebel groups and government forces in Homs and around Damascus. Human rights activists say thousands of civilians are trapped in Homs as the fighting increases between opposition groups and militias loyal to President Bashar al-Assad. UN human rights officials have called on all parties to respect their obligations under international law, avoid civilian casualties, and allow trapped civilians to leave without fear of persecution or violence. In neighboring Iraq, the surge in sectarian violence continues as a suicide attack on a Shiite mosque in the capital, Baghdad, claimed the lives of at least 15 people and left more than 30 wounded. The attack happened late yesterday when guards at the exit to the mosque stopped a woman who then blew herself up amidst worshippers leaving after sunset prayers. Earlier in the day, also in Baghdad, a car bombing killed 4 people and injured 6 others. The number of people killed in militant attacks across Iraq last month reached more than 700. And in Yemen, an explosive device placed at the roadside next to a police patrol car in the capital Sana'a killed 3 soldiers of the Interior Ministry. The attack was deemed to aim directly at the police car and the soldiers patrolling around the area. Preliminary investigation said the blast was triggered by a time explosive device placed in a shopping bag. Thus far, there has been no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack. Turkish police fired volleys of tear gas at protesters who had gathered at Taksim Square in Istanbul with the intention of entering Gezi Park. The park has been cordoned off hours after the city's governor warned that the demonstration was illegal and participants would be dispersed. The Taksim Solidarity platform, combining an array of political groups, converged on the square with the aim of entering the park. Demonstrators argued with police at the entrance, who in return pushed them away with pressurized water and tear gas. They also chased protesters down 2 main streets of Taksim, firing tear gas. At least 1 protester was injured. Venezuela will give humanitarian asylum to former U.S. intelligence contractor Edward Snowden. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro said he will offer asylum to Snowden to protect him from being persecuted by the U.S. government. Snowden, who is still stranded in the transit area of a Moscow airport, was charged by the U.S. government with 3 counts of felony. He had disclosed a highly classified surveillance program codenamed PRISM, which intercepted emails and phone conversations of millions of people. He has been in Moscow for 2 weeks now after his U.S. passport was revoked by Washington. The Nicaraguan and Bolivian presidents also said they would grant asylum to Snowden. Here at home, a national vision for secure, stable and prosperous Jordan was launched by the Middle East Studies Center in Amman today. It seeks to adopt practical policies to prevent the country from sliding into chaos and achieve stability, security and prosperity to all Jordanians. Director General of the Center, Jawad Al-Hamad, said the vision was inspired by Jordan's National Charter 1991 and the 2005 national agendas. He said the vision aims to create a conducive environment for dialogue among all Jordanians to address challenges facing the country and crystallize a vision for Jordan's future, including new roles for state and civil society institutions. One of the most hotly anticipated births of the year is the arrival of the first baby of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, William and Kate. Kate's pregnancy has been one of the most talked about topics over the last months, not just in the press, but among mums-to-be, whose little ones are also due this year. According to a recent study, the royal baby, the third in line to throne, will provide another great marketing opportunity for British business 1 year after the Diamond Jubilee and 2 years after the royal wedding of Kate and William. It is estimated that the arrival of the baby could add more than £245 million to the British economy, including money spent on commemorative china and other collectibles, toys, books, DVDs and media. A royal collection on display at palace shops by the Royal Collection Trust, which uses all profits for the upkeep of the royal palaces, has proved an instant hit with customers. So it seems just as the Kate effect has already brought good fortunes to the fashion world, it looks like William and Kate's offspring will mean good news to the baby retail market. And finally, for a quick look at the weather, it continues to be fair tonight in hilly areas and moderate in the Jordan Valley and Aqaba, with northwesterly light to moderate winds. Tomorrow, relatively hot weather prevails in most regions, with a high of 32 degrees Celsius in Amman. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect hotter conditions, while winds will be northerly moderate to brisk and the seas slightly choppy. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. Liberal political leader Mohammed al-Baradei is named as Egypt's interim prime minister as clashes continue across the country's squares between supporters and opponents of the deposed president. The main Syrian opposition national coalition elects Ahmed Jarba, a tribal figure from the eastern province of Hasaka, as its president after a close runoff vote held in Istanbul. And French woman Marion Bartoli won the Wimbledon title, her first Grand Slam title ever, after beating Sabine Lisicki. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.